Okay, good afternoon, everyone here in the East. My name is Jim Cruikshank from MMP, and welcome to the Business Owners Series. Uh, Today is the title of our session, People, Culture, and Leadership, Managing Your Workforce in a Post-Pandemic World. So thank you all for attending today. I want to extend my own thanks to MMP for the opportunity to speak here today. So every day, the state of human resources post-COVID seems to change. Most days, I start the day, as many of you do, reading the news of the day, and I usually follow it up with listening to the local news, the 15 minutes it takes me to drive to the office. And every day, there's a story. And, today's stories covered in separate news articles and reports. A few things hit the news. Unvaccinated staff placed on leave. Canadians worried about compensation levels not keeping up with inflation and cost of living increases. Government sponsored grants supporting retraining for new skills development that are going to be required as we emerge from post COVID. Diversity, equity, and inclusion in the tech sector and changes in recruiting practices. And that's just today before 8 a.m. The range of topics that we can talk about in the people, culture, and leadership space is huge. And what I hope to do in our time together today is make some sense of the priority topics and issues for you, as business owners and advisors. And I'm really looking forward to the brief time we've got together today. We are absolutely, without a doubt, in one of the most challenging periods of history, not just in the area of human capital, but for businesses in general. In all of this chaos and change, we have business owners trying to keep up, be flexible, keep the lights on, grow and thrive. And what we've really seen too over the last 20 odd months is some of the most resilient entrepreneurs, who accept the challenge presented and reorient businesses, thrive, do things differently. And we're fortunate at MNP to have really been able to work shoulder to shoulder with many of our clients, supporting this kind of change and success. So today, I feel really fortunate to have the opportunity to share with you some of these experiences, perspectives, and advice on how to navigate the days, the weeks, the months to come. And just a bit about me. I joined MNP at the height of the pandemic in 2020. Again, for those just joining the call, my name's Jim Cruikshank. I'm a senior manager in our consulting practice. I'm based in Burlington, Ontario. And I joined at the height of the pandemic in October until, not in the not so distant past, the number of people I've been able to meet in person in my year here, I could use two hands and probably count all of them. It started to creep up now. Well, my task when I joined the firm was to build and grow our human capital HR consulting practice. I've been around for a while. Most of my career has been in consulting. All of my career has been on the people side of organizations, working on org design, change management, talent strategies, performance improvement, HR policies, recruitment, retention. Helping organizations navigate change is a true passion of mine. I wake up every day really excited about the possibilities. I'm part of a team at MMP of really skilled and experienced consultants who work closely with our clients to build solutions to the issues we're going to talk about today. I'm really pleased to have my counterpart from Victoria, Daniel Kassoon, working a bit behind the curtain today, monitoring questions in our chat. And we may even hear from Dan at certain points today. So please, if you have a question at any time, enter it into the chat. We have some time at the end for questions. If it's in the chat, we can also get back to you after if we don't have time during the call today. But like I said, things are happening really fast. And, not only is there so much going on, but there's so many different points of view on what's going on that it's overwhelming. Some view the current situation with HR as we come out of COVID as an opportunity. So is it an opportunity? Is it a problem? Is it a challenge? It's probably all of those things. It's hard to say. But what we do know is this: the relationship that people have with work has changed. People themselves over the course of COVID have fundamentally changed in what they value and then what they're bringing then to the workplace. Employers and employees are trying to figure out the complexities of work and workplace by the day. Ultimately, me and my team believe that success moving forward for businesses lies in a collaborative effort of all of the players, employers, employees, those trusted advisors that you may have known for years or are just getting to know. We're starting with and I've mentioned this. There is a new employer-employee relationship that we're trying to forge now as we come out of COVID, and everything here seems to be open for negotiation in this new relationship between employees and employers. But what COVID has done is it's just created this seismic shift in employer-employee relations. We are today in what we would call in HR an employee market at the moment, and it creates complexities for owners and leaders. Employees are moving roles and jobs in the largest numbers in recent history. The power in negotiations with employers is mostly in the hands of employees at the moment. That proverbial war for talent that we've all talked about for years is very real and very present. Not just the talent that you want in your company, but that also for the talent that you want to keep in your company. And for even the most experienced people manager, this is the most challenging time managing people than most have ever experienced. Personally, I'm really excited about the future of work. Yes, it's all negotiation, but I do believe that great things are in store if we can collectively come to these challenges with open minds and collaborative spirit. When COVID first hit, with wave one back in March of 20, we as a society made many changes in how we work, where we work, how we live in a matter of days and weeks. And the changes that we made would have taken years to accomplish. But don't get me wrong, I'm not thanking COVID at all. But what I have seen over the last number of months, as you do see in stressful times, is you see examples of triumphs of the human spirit. And, the perseverance and creativity that we've seen demonstrated have been incredible. And that's what gives me hope and drives my excitement. It gives me that inspiration. That together we're going to find solutions to many of these really unique HR people challenges that are coming up through COVID. But success will be a collective effort to solve a number of these questions, like how will I work in the future? Where will the work take place? What are the hours of work going to be? What's being done to ensure a safe and healthy workplace? How are we going to measure performance in the future, both of the organization generally, but employees, managers, and supervisors? Are health benefits included? Are they flexible? But we're in this period now where employers are getting to know employees again. Employees are getting to know their employers again, and it's really a time for some heightened entrepreneurialism. As we start to come out of COVID, there are some main themes that we're seeing in the HR and human capital space, and I'll just want to talk about a few of these as context for what we do and change. The first one is what's called the Great Resignation. I'm also going to talk about this in a little while as well. According to McKinsey and Company in a report that they released about a month or so ago, 53% of employers across several countries, including Canada, are experiencing turnover at an all-time high. And what this is driven by is a massive shift in employee needs. Again, people have changed over the course of the pandemic and what they value and how they view work. But people are looking for things that they didn't have in a current job, or that they've realized that they want in a role now moving forward. There was a paper that was just released about a week ago in a publication called HR Executive, by an author, Phil Labinas. And what he puts in his article is that employees are no longer content to define themselves by their jobs. There's much more in work and in life, and there's really a change in how individuals position work and within their lives, and then figure what that means for themselves, right? There's the job is truly part of your life still, but arguably it's not the biggest part for many, where it may have been 18, 20 months ago. Yeah, people still realize this need for a paycheck. So where is it that we go from here with that Great Resignation? I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. There is what's called the productivity debate. And how many people have either said or heard, I'm more productive at home than I am at the office? I've found this to be really interesting. There's a move by many employers to say, okay, that may or may not be true, but let's work collectively and figure it out. What the pandemic exposed really is how poorly many employers actually tracked productivity, particularly in some of those office-based roles where people had an option then to go and work from home. But the implications of this are really large. If we think about compensation in the future and rewarding people for performance, this is a definition of productivity that we're going to need to solve. The employee demand for flexibility. In the early days of the pandemic, employers out of necessity, we did everything that they could to offer flexible work arrangements to as many of the employee base as possible. And now as we start to think post-pandemic, employers are starting to redefine what work looks like. And in some cases, sort of swing that pendulum of flexibility a little bit back towards the employer. And this, and many of you I'm sure experience it, it's not necessarily met with universal support, right? But what we're seeing here is flexibility is not just being demanded in hours of work. We're starting to see flexibility sought after in compensation structures, in benefits plans as we work through future post-pandemic planning. More options as much as you can get related to your employee-employer relationship, more options to fit more ways of life. And I'd really love people's perspectives and experiences with this. Please put them in the chat or raise them if we have questions. Burnout is a really significant factor here. Days are longer. Workload seems to have increased, and it's not decreasing, or at least decreasing at a rate that takes us back to pre-COVID levels. One of my favorite clients said to me months back, I'm not working from home anymore, I'm sleeping at the office. And I'm sure that many on this line feel that way, right? Some probably felt that way in growing businesses for years, but I suspect even now it was more acute. The boundaries between work and home have largely disappeared. The challenge we now face is how do we set a new employee-employer relationship and regain that sense of work-life balance, okay? And when we talk about that, redefining that employer-employee relationship, there's also a bit of a different point of view. With all the mobility in the market, employees now, there's an average of less than 3 years that it said new employees stay with an organization. It's a relatively short time frame. And employers, by and large, still look at an employee relationship as larger than that or longer. And so there's a bit of, again, redefining, that you can't often look at your employee base in 5 years from now, in 5-year and 10-year chunks, right? it needs to get shortened in terms of window. And so it's against all of this backdrop that leaders are grappling with. How do we structure compensation and benefits programs for employees? How do we structure our return to the office? And the political landscape's changing. For those in Ontario that are on the call, last week, the Working for Workers Act of 2021 received assent, Bill 27. It's legislation to promote work-life balance. And so what this is, the Ontario Act requires now employers with 25 or more employees to have a written policy about employees disconnecting from their job at the end of a workday to help employees spend more time with their families. Policy, this could be, around expectation of response times for emails, encouraging employees to turn out of office notifications on, right? So all this stuff. It does come into force in 6 months, around June of 2022. And what we can expect right now, we don't know a lot of the mechanics about it, but there should be a new set of regulations that will come out in the spring that are going to guide what a lot of this policy background really needs to get to. So with all of that as a base, where do we go from here? And so we want to talk about structuring the post-COVID workplace, some recruiting and retention challenges, compensation trends and comp planning issues, and as well the importance of culture and leadership. We've got a few polls throughout, and Adam, this is the first one. Maybe we can quickly run through this. So 3 questions, everybody. For those who had staff working from home, will working from home or a hybrid approach become permanent for you? So just if you can just answer that one right on screen. So Adam, I don't see the results of the poll. There we go. So 61%, thank you, had those working from home. For those who required staff on site, did you have to make changes to the way work gets done to maintain public health standards? 86% of you said yes. And will your workplace return to the way that it was pre-COVID? 23% say that it will. That's a higher number than I would have expected. But 77% say no, the changes that we have are permanent. Thank you very, very much for those. But it continues to show what some of the challenges are as we move forward. And so I'll spend just another couple of minutes on what's called the productivity debate. And this is one of the most common debates around return to the office, rising to owners and leaders when doing post-COVID planning. And it goes a bit like this. The employer's position is, we've decided our team needs to return to our site. The employee says, I'm way more productive than I am at home in the office. And so how are employers addressing this issue? I had a client of mine recently say to me, if my employees are being more productive at home, shouldn't I be able to provide more work for them over the course of a day? And the response really is to work collaboratively and redefine this. But one of the differences that drives some of this debate are different points of view, right? Employers are really concerned primarily with work productivity, the amount that gets done during a workday. Whereas employees, we're now focused more on life productivity, the number of work-life tasks you complete in a day. And so we're not all on the same page, but that's where it comes to, you're looking for ways to become a more effective organization and do it together, right? And a lot of organizations are now starting to tie goals, company goals and employee goals together and plan ahead to address these kind of questions. Like how is it we're going to grow our revenues? Are there ways that we can change how we work given our hybrid structures and new ways of working? How we can change the processes that we have together how do we maintain flexibility to address growth? But part of this is what expectations can we all have and share and generate a commitment to future success so that we can really put the productivity debate a bit to rest. For those who are in that process, and it's ever changing by the day, of return to work site, what are the things that are driving success there? How do they make that transition back successful? What we're finding that the practices out there that works, you really as an owner and as a leader need to listen to your employees and your broader management team. What are the pressure points? What are the needs? What are the different points of view that are out there? Demonstrate to your employee base that you're doing everything that you can to create a safe and healthy workplace for your employees, right? Communicate it and talk about it. Give people time to transition back to something that may resemble pre-pandemic work structures. But it just takes people time to acclimate. Restructure policies and procedures that demonstrate appreciation to work-life balance. Like when I first added this point to this slide a week or so ago, I was putting it there because it's good practice. Now, as I just said in Ontario, it's now the law and something that we're going to need to do in the next 6 months. But work collaboratively with employees on solutions to issues that arise and be transparent and candid and honest about what's going on. The last point here is manage the change intentionally. And that's a change to, we had 77% of you said, the changes you made to your workplace are going to be permanent. Well, managing that change, the adoption of that change and those changes very intentionally with a plan for communications, a plan to engage employees in the solution, and training if training on new solutions, new tools, new processes is needed, that's what's going to really facilitate that kind of adoption. But the three takeaways there: communicate, listen, and collaborate are the things that will get owners and leaders really to success. Our second poll of the day on retention and compensation. So here are the two poll questions. Adam, if you could launch these and put those results on screen too. How many expect to see increased turnover in your staff in the next 6 to 12 months? Do you expect to see turnover? Do you not? And how many plan to increase comp levels for staff in 2022? So those two questions, if you could respond to those. Again, Adam, if you could share those results. Right. So 63%, that's expect to see turnover. So we would say that's consistent and as high as what or even higher than what the US-based studies would say. Plan to increase compensation in 2022. 70% say there is a plan to increase compensation levels. So 63% expect to see turnover, 70% a compensation increase. Thank you all very, very much for that. One of the things, so as we start to see compensation pressure points, so the things that we're seeing in the post-COVID comp world is comp levels are trending upwards, right? So those of you that say you're planning an increase, you would be in the majority now. What we're starting to see, there's a bit of catch up in the market. Comp levels are rising above pre-pandemic levels. Yesterday in the Globe and Mail, there was an article by Bill Curry, and here's the headline: 2/3 of Canadians fear pay won't keep up with inflation. And that was the result of a Nano survey. But also in yesterday's Globe and Mail, they said the annualized month wage gains are off the charts at 7% to 9% in the average hourly wages of permanent workers every month since July. So comp is trending up, and that's what employees are going to start really looking for. We're seeing changes in benefits plans. Plans now are sort of a must-have. Flexibility in how to spend benefits is increasingly in demand as there's just this trend for overall flexibility. Pay for performance. Again, structures of bonus programs are under scrutiny. I mentioned this before. To really make these successful and drive engagement and uptake, you've got to come up with that definition of performance. And there's a stress on physical and emotional well-being, and this is, providing that physically safe and violence discrimination-free workplace is no longer enough, right? There needs to be employees are really expecting now a broader focus on mental health and well-being. So whether it's mental health benefits, flexibility for emergent situations, that's what we're starting to see emerge with our clients and the overall industry trends as we go forward. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about retention and recruitment. And I'm going to circle back to the Great Resignation. I talked about this before, and this is what we're seeing in the market is quit rates are at an all-time high. In September, US, Canada combined hit over 3%, according to the World Economic Forum, right? And when you poll employees, in this publication, 40% stated that employees stated they're at least somewhat likely to leave current jobs in the next 3 to 6 months. If we boil that number down by industry, it shakes out a bit like this. So 32% of employees in education, 43% in goods producing companies, 36% in healthcare and social assistance, 47% in leisure and hospitality, 41% in white collar roles. All of those percentages are people that would expect to change jobs 3 to 6 months. And so owners and leaders need to be, thinking about how to manage this issue moving forward. And, we talked about compensation, but it isn't all about compensation, because employees will leave for all sorts of reasons, right? Employee dissatisfaction is one. Not being challenged in a role is what we see common on exit interviews. Also includes feeling underappreciated and in the role. So particularly as we come post-COVID, the look on what people are rewarded for and what they see as tangible is an important factor in retention, because it's one of the key reasons why employees may leave. There are employees who leave for better alternatives, right? Ranging from career progression to more money. But this is one of those things that unless you as an owner or leader ask about it, you'll not really know, at least not directly, about why. If you see that uptick in turnover that 63% of you expect, of what's going to drive it, engage with them and ask of what they're thinking and what they're feeling, right? There are planned changes. This is really, I think, part of a key factor in what they're calling the Great Resignation. A lot of people, particularly younger in your workforce, have plans of when they're going to change jobs. Many didn't. They weren't, like me in the middle, decided to make a job change in the middle of the pandemic. Most stayed in place, but now there's going to be a catch up, and you'll see a lot of momentum and change moving forward. So but it's a planned change. And the second, would be a negative experience on the job. And my team, we're involved in this particular aspect of it all quite regularly now. Is one of the key reasons that employees leave jobs within their first 3 to 6 months of joining a job is because their onboarding program didn't work well. So really thinking now about what has to be in that program, what employees are going to look for, what you need to remind your existing employee base of when they, to keep them engaged, to keep them motivated, right? Those are, so there's lots of reasons, but not all of them are really quite obvious. So, if you as an owner and a leader want to battle this trend, there are a number of things here. Address that issue of burnout, take it head on, try to understand, what are your employees feeling? How are they feeling? How can we work differently? Invest in development. And in, the investing in development, people will repay a contribution to you as an owner, in a contribution to their development. They'll repay that with retention. And as you think about this, what's much more in demand, what we would say is development on soft skills, right? Most of the thinking in the market today is that technical skills are always going to be available. You're always going to be able to find them, but you need people who are capable of being flexible, who can lead expertly in a virtual environment, working, how they work, people who can work effectively in a virtual environment. These are things that not only help people be successful, but they're going to help the company be successful, right? Reviewing the compensation structures, benefits, and total rewards, and what that overall balance is. Strengthen onboarding. Review role descriptions to ensure that they reflect reality. I can't tell you the number of organizations, companies, myself or my team will go into, will look at role descriptions and they haven't been looked at in a decade or more. And with all of the change that's happened, it's wise to start with your critical roles, review those to make sure they reflect the working realities, the realities of the workplace. And because when people will look, and even when you go to recruit, you want to make sure it gives them a clear picture of the work today and the demands that you're going to be asking of people, right? And again, take that look back at performance management and make changes if necessary. I have a question for everybody. What's this? And take a second and add it into the chat. And Dan, if you're on, because I can't quite see the chat, unmute yourself and let's see if we come up with what some of the suggestions might be.
All right, chat is open.
This? We'll just give everybody 30 seconds. The purple squirrel.
Yeah,
Any suggestions, Dan?
We have Prince Squirrel, Purple Chipmunk, Purple Cow reinvented. Squirrels are just rats with bushy tails and good PR.
There we go. So what this actually is, the purple squirrel is one of the biggest threats to effective recruiting of new people to a company. And what this is, and this is one of those things to success as you start to come out of post-COVID as an owner or as a people leader, is one of the key challenges is this could easily be a unicorn. You're often looking for something in historical recruiting practices that doesn't exist, right? So you're looking for things like qualifications you might really not need. Just to think off the top of my head, do you actually need a university degree? Do you need 10 years of industry experience? Are those things must-haves or nice-to-haves? Remember, these days, there are more employees in the market looking for work, looking for new roles, that you can cast the net a little bit wider, but take that look at saying, what do we really, really need? That's going to drive our success and drive us forward, right? Look seriously at those must-haves. I think so that's sort of the first thing I think to think about in recruiting. The second big thing to think about in recruiting right now is time frame. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that employees tend to look out in less periods of time. Now it's less than 3 years with their future with an organization. and they have in their mindset mobility, and so, with mobility as high as it is, I'm starting to see my clients start to adapt to that kind of mobility and adapt their recruiting practices to it. I'm reading a book right now that's written by the former chief human resource officer of LinkedIn, and in it he talks about how organizations are really changing a message to attract a mobile workforce. And I've seen this as well. But what he says, the message could be summed up as this. He would quote and say, "Come and work for my company, and I'll help you leave it." What he's saying is, I'm going to invest in you. I'm going to build you. I'm going to position you as an individual to succeed in your life and your career. And I'm going to do it quickly, and I'm going to do it effectively. We're all going to benefit from it. And that is one of those changes of message to think about in really powerful recruiting strategies. So preparing people for a next step. It's also something where you think about that. If you prepare people for their next step and they do leave and they go to somewhere else, in many ways it's good for them, and also it's good for your own brand, your own company's brand. This is, we build good people, right? It's something special to us, and it fuels itself. So the glass is, maybe to me that's a glass is half full approach. But I really do think it's interesting. The last thing I would advise people with recruitment and retention as we get post-COVID is take a look at the offer letters that you've historically given to new employees and look at them really carefully, spell out responsibilities and location of work, and do it really, really carefully, because that clarity may help you out down the road. I'm going to get to our last sort of area of our polls, and this is and our discussion today around culture and leadership. So a couple of questions here. As we come out post-COVID, are you concerned with your business culture on a rating of 1 to 5, 1 being concerned, 5 being not concerned? And have you ever undertaken a formal review of your culture? Yes or no? And so, Adam, if we can put those results, if I could take a look at those results as they come in. So are you concerned with your business culture, right? Over half, 53%, would say, I would say it's top of mind, rating a 1, 2. 3/4 of you would say, it's at least, it's a concern that raises to a moderate level of concern, right? So you are concerned with your culture, but by and large, 80% of you have never taken a formal look at your culture. So interestingly, my team and I spend a lot of time helping organizations understand their culture. And the tools that you can use to do it range from, very simple engagement surveys that actually can tell you what culture it is you as an organization have versus what a description of, and with that definition of what you have, help you define what it is you want and then what you need to do to get there. And we can define those on very simple scales. We like to, a simple way to do it is you can define culture a very real way with 10 pairs of words, things like individual oriented and team oriented. And where is it on a scale? Are we traditional or are we innovative? Where is that on a scale? Are we rules oriented? Are we goals oriented? And as you go down those ranges, you paint a picture of yourself. You paint a picture of the culture that you have. And then you as an owner with your management team and your employee base say, well, as we emerge post-COVID, what do we want? What's the culture we want? And then be able to really say it and articulate it. And there are other, really, those are basic tools to really complex tools to understand your culture, but understand what people value. Very, very early, like at the start of this presentation, I said, people are different now. What we do find at this stage in the pandemic and the pandemic recovery is people today value things very differently than they did 20 months ago, right? We now, as individuals value flexibility more, safety more. Um, uh, we value a different host of benefits, right? Now, if you're going to change things as an owner or a leader to retain staff or recruit staff, you need to understand what it is they actually value, because those programs, retention programs only work if what it is you're offering people is something they value. So understand what they value out of your culture, understand what they value out of their work, do it collaboratively, work, and really set yourself up for success in that communication, collaboration, and really take that on when we're thinking about culture. And so lastly, as I start to sum things up here, what would we see as the leadership imperatives post-COVID? And these are some of the key things that employees look to their owners, leaders for at this stage, right? First and foremost, it's very much people first, and they're looking for some type of real visible demonstration and commitment to maintaining people-oriented changes. Being a connector, right? Take steps to make sure that people stay connected to the workplace and to their colleagues at work. There is the pandemic, and the virtual workplace has been dehumanizing in many ways. Finding new ways for people to connect is something that is really as a craving that's out there. Employees, quite frankly, they appreciate candor in their leaders, being frank and open about what's happening, what our plans are, the directions for the future. And finally, creating new rules, right? Revisiting those old policies, old ways of working, right? Back to those survey numbers, the majority of you think there are the ways of working you've adopted are going to be permanent, right? Look at those ways of working, make sure they reflect the new realities of going forward, and go forward strategies to grow and thrive. I'd just like to say, before I turn this over to questions, we have a really great team at M&P in our human capital space, and in our overall as a firm. I think we have over 90 solutions that we offer to our clients. The ones that we've talked about today, and my team in HR really deliver a handful of those. But please do reach out. I'd love the opportunity to get to know you, to get to know your company, to get to know the history, to get to know the plan, and to be part of, if we can, right, supporting your success really as we go forward. So thank you very, very much for the time. And I think we have some time for questions. So Adam or Dan, if there are questions that were in the chat, or if anyone wants to raise a question, we've got a few minutes.
In the chat, big question for us: the return to work site issues. So Peter, I was just wondering if you can expand on that one. We might be able to give you a take.
Okay.
And then another question we have, just as we're looking into that, from Colleen. She totally agrees that they need to offer their team member training on soft skills. Do you have any suggestions, where you can go looking for those, or maybe even to further define what that means, Jim?
Sure. So a couple of those questions, and thanks for those. The return to the work site. There are a number of what are we seeing out there in terms of examples, right? One of the things of the foundation of this is to take a look at what the roles and what the structure of the work actually really requires, because and this is this of how you shape a hybrid structure, right? If people are individual contributors, they don't rely on a team to do the work that they do. Odds are you can maintain a level of flexibility there. But one of the things in shaping a little bit more structure, look at those team structures. We often see, that certain teams will return to the office on certain days, so that people are there collectively, but they're there because they're on a common team with a common purpose and common clients, and they can still share, a bit of that direct team experience, but you can do it in a safe and socially distant way. Particularly if you really look at how you work your schedule of when different teams and different people are on the work site. So it's that structure of the work. Again, but it's really looking at those individual needs, and it's the characteristics of the work drive a lot of that sort of strategy going forward. The other piece is there are people that just thrive in the workplace. They still just want to come back, and but again, they're also concerned about safety and well-being and those things, and it's that's the employer making sure that can be done safely. But so focus on the strict nature of the work, scheduling, when team-based activities can happen, and bring those into the workplace at the right time. In terms of the second question, Dan, related to leadership soft skills, there are, change leadership training, overall leadership skill development, how to lead in a virtual workplace. Those are things that our team at MMP also does structure and does deliver. And you're starting to see there are a number of industry associations as well that are starting to promote for their members these types of sort of industry specific skills. But if there's a specific question for you, please reach out. We'll make sure we can point you in the right direction for those.
Thanks, Jim. Another question that we have, so one is around, when Bill 27 becomes effective, can employees then report employers violating the act? For that one, we're still waiting on more details. Typically, there is an outlet, but that is, from what we've seen right now, TBD. So appreciate that question there. Another one that we have is, any suggestions, best practices on how to build team culture bonding when working remote? I find younger employees miss this part the most.
Yes. So team culture bonding in a virtual environment. There are, yes. So one of the things that we see a lot of organizations do, right, is have very regular virtual, like your virtual team meetings, which are sort of virtual after work. Go for it. It's a virtual celebration or a virtual discussion, right? You can just open things up to have people, invite them to, we're just gonna join a call so we can see each other, and talk sometimes about work, but a lot more about life. But here's one of the keys: if it's going to be successful and you're going to do it virtually, having your camera off is not an option. It's what people want to see. They miss this look of people. So I would really say that. The other thing too, and I found this, is I think communication between staff members, particularly younger staff members, is probably more robust than it's ever been. So they're probably staying connected one-on-one to people, but really creating those team events, virtual team events, where people can see everyone, see where they're actually working from, hear what they're working on, hear, the things that, you used to be able to do in person, you now do that virtually. The other piece is ask the employees what would work for them. That, your desire is to build that culture, of connectedness. Embrace sort of that community and say, well, what can we do together? Like, give us some ideas. That's the way I think about structuring those moving forward.
Yeah, and Jim, one more piece to add to that too. I love your last bit on ask the employees. What we've noticed with some organizations, and it's size dependent, but some organizations have said, hey, instead of me as the manager trying to come up with cool ideas, ways to keep engaged remotely after 18 plus months, whatever we're at now, to Jim's point, ask, but you can also, task employees and just through volunteer, right? Okay, can a group of you come up with some activities and whatever that cadence is for your company? Employees will embrace it and take that on. And typically it's more meaningful than the manager just trying to come up with some type of idea. So we find little social committees or virtual social committees are helpful as well in giving, employees that ownership and a tiny little budget too, if possible, to send some things here and there.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that, Dan. Any other questions? I think we're probably got time for one more. And if not, then listen, I want to once again thank everyone for attending today. Again, if there's questions or there's follow-up, this is please do reach out. We do work all across this spectrum, across industry and across industry sizes. And wanted to make sure that we connect your business need to the right advisor on our end. So please do reach out, and we'll look forward to that and feedback on the sessions as well. So I'd like to thank everyone and hope to be able to speak to you all again in the future.